Well,
You did?
Mr. Troy just left, so hang on just a second. We have a quorum, but we will wait.
Well, we can wait a few more minutes for Mr. Trey, sure.
She just has to stop the general one instructors, ask you two different videos when it's archived.
Shane, I'm sorry, I've been following this along pretty closely. All along. I mean, it was kind of, it's pretty, like, it's harder to get that stuff spent in time manner than you think it is. I think it is. And when I started kind of research the deal for May and our with, it's a big deal. Harder than I thought to spend money. It is. It's complicated. As Tony kept saying, it's complicated. It's all complicated, even trying to.
We didn't receive anything from Blanket, but if we do between now and then, since we tabled it, I can get it on there.
Well, I know
They were at the meeting, but they didn't submit anything.
they were at the meeting.
Weren't they? I thought we had everybody.
I don't remember.
I thought we had everybody there.
I don't know if anybody showed them. We probably want to re-remind them one more time. Because I'm familiar enough with their system, know they've got some antiquated stuff too. It's under control of them. Their operator is our operator.
Jennifer, I know you were busy taking notes. I don't know if you, I just want to make sure you understand. Well, I shouldn't even phrase that. Just want to request that we make certain that the new ADA doesn't touch our general fund.
Oh, yeah.
You're only gonna have the attach sheets where they ask for
So you left it the same. It's not in. Well, we are running behind. We're supposed to start it in that.
Shane, there's another issue. If you were to give me that money to spend, I can buy the gravel and stuff that we can't get right now. I'm saying there's some out that we can't even get. We need like paving rock and stuff.
Oh, I know.
I mean, so.
Yeah.
Like proof and stuff, and I mean, get the stuff out of the current situation.
I mean, I'm happy for y'all that you're getting that work done
Well, yeah, we're working for it. Yeah.
or working toward it. Yeah. And I think that y'all need to include that tie into,
That tie-in may exceed that one number by itself. But,
well, then you need to ask for more.
well, we won't know till we get our engineering. We got, I mean,
We asked them to keep it to 300,000 or less
But that
on
may
the
be-
first disbursement.
but this may be in the next
So
round.
that's what they were shooting for.
So we might try to include it in the next round. I think.
Yeah.
But that's,
Because at the time, we weren't sure what Brown County was going to need. No, I mean, the main,
Oh.
we weren't sure. We knew that was going to be a huge chunk of our
Yeah.
first disbursement.
yeah,
We just didn't know how much.
they asked for the whole amount for our first disbursement.
Yeah, that one expenditure could have cleaned out our first disbursement. We tried not to do that. We tried to balance it. We tried to do that within the timeframe that we had to work with. All right, Steph. We have running? All right. All right, so we're live again. This is our public workshop that was posted. It was not a specific time, but it was scheduled to begin immediately following our.
Sharon got her minutes on her.
Oh, well, that's right. Does she take minutes of the workshop? Let me hold off on her.
Sorry,
I didn't notice she was missing. Thank you.
I just now thought about it. She said that she walked out something.
I was waiting on Larry and didn't even notice she left.
Were y'all in a hurry? Sorry.
Does anybody have any meetings you gotta get to? Because there's no particular order that we have to, I mean, the time, the slot was scheduled, but we've already blown that. We're already an hour behind. So. Stephanie, you can just leave it running instead of starting and stopping.
I like these now that they don't go blank on you every 30 seconds. Said I like this now that it doesn't go blank on you every 30 seconds. What screen?
I don't even.
Well, yours is just complicated. There you go. There you go. Of course, there's nothing on the budget on there.
Is this here, is that thing just brown?
Yes, it's just in our categories.
We had somebody in Brown County in admin now.
No, they're reported in the county in which they're hospitalized.
If y'all didn't hear, we're waiting on our county clerk to come back as soon as she gets back. Sorry, I'm
she is,
getting
ma'am.
hoarse. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so this is our budget workshop that was scheduled to immediately follow our regular scheduled Commissioners Court meeting this morning. So I will, it was duly posted. I'll declare a quorum and call the meeting to order. The one item is discussion regarding the 2021-22 Brown County budget and related items. First up is Dion from the museum. Dion, come on. You're speaking to the museum or you're going to speak for both? Okay, come on. We'll take I got to announce them each one. So first, let's do the museum.
Stephanie, whoever you want to speak.
Good morning, afternoon,
Looking here.
good morning. Thank you all for spending some time to visit with me. I'll start with the museum first, because I'm the current chair of the board. I have been for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. Last year's been rough for all of us, but at the museum, we shut down, closed. Because with the museum, everything in there, you touch, you walk around, so best thing to do during that time frame was to just close. And so during that time when we closed, the museum is super, super tight budget as it is. We only have 1 employee, and it's just really, really tight. And so whenever we shut down during that time, it was really, really hard. We took advantage of the time, and we made some improvements inside. So I really encourage y'all to take a visit right just like a couple steps away. It looks awesome. We have some new exhibits in there. Now there's a flow. So before you walk in, you kind of go anywhere, it's kind of open. Now it's like a legit museum. It's always been legit, but now we have a path you go through. Our World War II section is great with Tambui. We added a boot repair exhibit during the next year. Now that we're back open again, we're going to be improving some things as well on some new exhibits. The Dinosaur Day, I don't know if y'all heard about the Dinosaur Day that we had. That was probably our biggest day that we've had in a number of years because folks being cooped up so long, they were anxious to get their kids out and work with all the dinosaurs and stuff. And so we have a really good board right now. So we're very appreciative of the county giving us support to maintain the jail and across the street and keep the museum up and running. The amount of folks from out of town has increased. We even get folks from out of the nation, especially Germany, especially Germany, because folks, great-grandparents were POWs at Camp Dewey, and they're trying to find their great-great-grandpa, so we have all those records. So they call us and say, hey, do you know, we looked that up. Wanda does an excellent job. We were sad to say she's going to be leaving us here shortly, so we're trying to do everything we can, because some people's shoes you can't fit, and she's one. So we're requesting 15,560, which is more than we requested in the past. And some of that is because of that time frame that we were closed, and it really put us in a big crunch for this fiscal year. Yes.
Would that be a one-time or are you thinking of just?
Well, we were thinking about the 2,500 of that being from COVID, but we would love it to be an ongoing thing, but we understand how hard it is with the money. So talking about just the regular county, not the COVID money, but the regular money, we're requesting 13,560. And then we added, 13,000. We added 2,500 in COVID money, if possible.
Do you have an estimate on how much revenue you lost when it was closed because of COVID?
I don't think I have the exact number, but I can get that for you. We submit, I don't know if you'll have copies of the budget. We submitted that information. And I apologize, because I'm really focused on MHMR, so.
Sure. Because the loss in income is a permissible use of the COVID money, the CARES Act. And so.
The CARES Act? Or
Yes.
the new one, because we've already spent.
I mean,
all that.
not the new one, the
Recovery Act.
right. And so that would be important to gather that information.
Yeah, we for sure can get that to you all. It's not going to be a whole lot of money, just because we had a lot of folks going through museums, but right before COVID hit, we had new board members and things were really going and bustling, and we were starting to get a lot of traffic, and then the bottom fell.
What we'll have to do on that, Dion, is the county attorney's partially correct. It can be, but it's actually says COVID mitigation, which is to prevent COVID in the future. So what we'll simply do is we'll submit a question, make sure we can think, so we have it in black and white that we can use it. I anticipate it'll be yes,
Yeah.
but it may take a little bit longer to get that back, because they don't answer us on an immediate turnaround.
So any help at all would be wonderful to help with that. 5-6 months we were closed. I'm really excited about the museum. We're doing a lot of new things now. We have like a big opening on the park. We closed down Stanky for really help with that. I know some of the commissioners are helping us with the new parking lot that we're looking at for the jail, for the back, which is a win-win for this whole block, because we don't have parking as it is. And so, especially during court day. And so that's going to help a lot with that. So there's some really exciting things we're doing at the museum, and I'm really passionate about it because I have 7 grandkids myself, and most of the time, that's why I'm so kind of worn out today, because we had all 7 this
At
week.
once.
Yeah, we had them all this weekend. Whew, man, I'm tired. And so, but they're all teenager, younger, and they spend all their time on these things, on these phones. And it is the most discouraging thing. It's so depressing. And I told them, so we're going to go to a museum. We're going to go out there and we're going to see real history, the World War II artifacts, the early pioneer days, all the wonderful things we have out there, the dinosaur exhibit that we have out there, even how to make boots. I think it's the Mason, but how to make boots. And so once I got them in there, they were beaming, because this is like, it's not on the phone, and you hear about this stuff, and it's real, tangible, and I'm just really concerned that we're losing it. We're losing it more and more and more, and I think the COVID one side effect of that pandemic was people spent more time on the phone, and so they became even more used to just getting their phone and Googling something. And so whatever y'all can help with the Brown County Museum is greatly appreciated because it's an investment on the kids. It's an investment on the children, and that is our focus at the museum. It's on the children. That's the main, as a board, we made that commitment a couple months ago that we're going to be focused on education, working with the schools and get the children in there, because if we don't, because they're going to be sending their seats down the road, and we want to make sure they have appreciation of the past. So that was the main thing for the museum.
Questions about the museum? Please.
Appreciate it.
All right, so we'll move to now the Center for Life Resources request.
Okay. I got some handouts for y'all. So, thank you for the money that you've given us over the past many years. The pandemic was extremely hard on our center. We never closed. We stayed open the whole time. I was at the office every single day. Most of our services are provided through telehealth. However, because of what we do, we still have to go out and see people. The amount of suicide attempts was the worst. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been doing nothing but NHMR for 30 years. Started it right out of college, and this has been one of the most difficult years. I get kind of emotional thinking about it because of the death certificates that I have to sign. And some of them are just kids, or young adults in their 20s. One situation, one individual was in a bad way, he was having a hard time, and then the pandemic hit, and he had to stay home with his parents. He had to because of the circumstances. Well, he wanted his freedom, but because he had to stay with his parents, and he was already clinically depressed. So we were able to give him help a couple times when we caught him attempting to get hit by a train. That's what he's doing. But unfortunately, he committed suicide. And that is one situation where that was a direct link of his mental health diagnosis and the pandemic. And I have many stories like that. And our staff, I told my staff, I said, I know y'all are scared. And, during the height of it, it's scary. It's still scary. But our process team and some of our folks from mental health deputies, they still have to go out and see people face to face. And so we did everything, with masks, we even had gowns, did everything that's still pretty nerve-wracking. And so there was about 3 or 4 months, whenever, I think it was around March, April, when it really hit. It seems like 30 years ago. So when that pandemic hit, I couldn't wait for the state to tell me how to provide services. I couldn't do it. So I said, we gotta see these folks. These are our residents, these are our county folks, we need to see them. Especially when they're crying and hurting, and thinking about hurting themselves or hurting other people. And so I said, we're gonna provide services. I on my own started to telehealth, because we already were set up for it. But at the state, it took them 4 months before they even told us, okay, this is how you can get reimbursed. Because before, the only way we could get money paid for that service through Medicaid or an HMO was to see them face to face. So whenever that service started, they didn't give us any means to do that. So I said, well, we're just gonna have to do it. And then the state finally did, but they didn't let us go retro all the way back to the beginning. And so that's why, if you look at Unit 100, 676 people, and that's just from July through July. That 676, that represents new people, new folks that have never received services from Center for Life Resources, or MHMR. In the past, people would call and they hear, hey, you need to get hold of Dion. If you have a family member who's depressed, or maybe they're hearing voices, whatnot, and then they would call, and then they realize that we're MHMR, the old term, and then they hang up because they want that stigma. Pandemic hit, they didn't care about the stigma as much. They just wanted help. And so that's the reason why we had 676 folks who brand new, never seen got services before from us. And you can see our grand total for the county 2,168 people. That's how many people unduplicated we saw. Some of these folks got multiple services during the year, but we saw 2,000, which is about almost 1.5% of the total county people that we saw. And you know, some folks think we're state employees, which we're not, obviously. We're a unit local government. But one of my frustrations, shameless, is real one of my frustrations is the legislation that just ended. There's a lot of talk about behavioral health. I think there's even language in like the recovery funds and stuff. But when it came right down to it, not $1 was given to centers, community MHMORs, local mental health authorities. There's 39 of us, and none of us are getting any kind of COVID relief.
I don't speak for everybody, but none of us like the way that bill was written.
Yeah.
We're just having to work with them.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping that they would give funds specifically for MHMR because of what we do, because we're frontline, we're right there, and a lot of the pandemic affected people's mental health. And so that's the reason why any consideration of the vehicle is awesome.
We got approval for that.
Yeah, very appreciative.
The commissioners will have to approve it, but the money's there if they approve it.
And that's awesome. So thank you. But any other funds that are available would be greatly appreciated. Specifically, if you look at the $50,000 for the transportation that we've requested, which has been the same for a number of years. I never actually 1 year, years ago, I decreased it and then I increased it back. But right now, I checked the numbers before I got here, and we're projected to spend $75,000 this year, just on transport, only for Brown County. So we've surpassed the $50,000, and the reason is because there's been so many hospitalizations. This has been the worst year, and we don't have the funds, and I don't want to sound like just dropping or whatever. But at the end of the day, at 2 o'clock in the morning, when you're calling me, and then I got the ER doc saying, okay, what are you gonna do? And that person is needing help, we're gonna send them. We're gonna do what we need to do, and then I'll have to worry about the money later on, because when it comes to people, there is no price on that. There's no price to cut on people. I think that we're working with the most valuable component of the county, which is souls. Human lives. And so we're asking for $50,000 as well for the transportation, and we didn't ask for an increase on the county's $5,000. And I think at the bottom of your sheet there, it shows the $5,200. If you divide that by how many people we saw, that comes to $2.39 per person, which is an extremely good deal for $2.39 per person.
I don't think we have that, Hannah.
Is it not written on the bottom?
Is it? Oh, the handwritten.
Yeah, the handwritten.
Okay.
So it comes to $2.39 per person.
Gotcha.
So any help, y'all, of course, we appreciate if you can meet the $50,000 and the same amount of the $5,000. But anything above that would be greatly appreciated, just because the pandemic's still here. There's still a lot of things going on. Plus, there's not as much stigma, so we're seeing more people. There's more people who are needing help. There's more people hurting, and so we're providing those services. Y'all should be very proud that we're the smallest community MHMR center in Texas that has an autism program. We have 3 doctors, psychiatrists on staff through telehealth. Actually 4. We have clinics in every county. We have the most LPCs than any other center our size. We're very, very blessed. We truly are very blessed. And we're very fiscally conservative. And you guys know that about me. I've always been that way. So whenever I come to you and I say it's been a hard year for all of us, and it has been, true for us at the center and those 200+ employees that we have, who every day, I always tell them, and y'all are our cousins, and I've said that before, I don't know if y'all remember, but y'all are our cousins, because the support you're giving us helps someone else. So you're part of that link to make someone's life better. And the stuff that you do for us helps you earn our wings. And we earn our wings, so whenever we're gone, because all are gone, a part of us can remain here by the services we're able to provide our local folks. So that's really all I wanted to say. I just appreciate y'all. I know you guys have got a lot on your plate, very important roles that you have, and I appreciate y'all. Do you have any questions about the numbers?
I have an auditor question. What two lines are his? 504, and does he have another line?
Yeah, he's got, 504 is the museum, the MHMR transports is the 509 down there, 655, 509.
Well, 509, but I don't know if they have another line.
And
Or
then
MHMR is 509, and that's it.
No, there's another one, it's, 630579, which is up kind of in the middle of the page. Same
Okay.
page, kind of in the middle.
There he is. That's what I was trying to find.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay, I couldn't find that other line for you. This is an internal question. Thank you. I couldn't figure your two spots for your image.
Is there any questions from anybody?
Thank you for your hard work. I know you are a fiscal conservative. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, Dion.
Have a good day.
And Josie, before I forget, we got an answer late Friday on the radio. Josie had asked if we pay for the radio project out of the Recovery Funds Act, and they said no. So even though we tried to put the spin that it was public safety related, they still said no. So we tried. We're trying to get that off of our normal budget, maybe take that out of the other. So as we move forward, next, is anybody here from the ARC?
Yes.
I think it's came out of the tax.
Didn't recognize you with your mask on.
Sorry.
It's all right.
I'm trying to be safe. We know the numbers are coming back up, so I did get my first shot. Waiting to get my second one.
Good job.
So I'm trying to be cautious. Got a new baby, so I'm be cautious. So I am with the ARC. I've seen some of y'all throughout the community and everything. I know when most people hear of the ARC, some people kind of like, oh, women's services. That's how we are known through most of the community as women's services. We're a women's shelter. And we are trying to impress upon people that we are so much more than a women's shelter. We provide a complete community service to the 3 counties that we serve. The majority of our services, though, are centered here in Brown County. But we do serve men, women, children, and pets. We are one of only about 3 shelters in all of Texas that actually let survivors bring their pets to the shelter with them. We do have an on-site kennel. Most people are not aware of that. But we also do allow men to our shelter as well. There are a lot of things that go into that as far as safety measures to make sure that we are keeping the women and children that are safe. But we do know that men can also be victims as well. And so that is just a little bit of our spiel that we've been trying to give to people to know that we serve more than just
Silence there.
I know it's already been said here before about it being unprecedented times. I can't tell you how many webinars I've taken and trainings, and that's like their starting line. During unprecedented times, how are we getting through this? It's been hard. It has been so hard at the shelter. I can't even tell y'all, we have not shut down. We are a 24-hour shelter. We did not close for a single day. We have staff there. We have to have staff there 24/7. We have security throughout the shelter, but to make sure that someone's there to help make sure that everyone's safe. If we do have an abuser come up to the premise, which has happened, we have to make sure that someone's there to notify police to have them done. We saw just as many clients this year as we did the previous year, and even more than the previous year before that. So we're expecting to have even more come. We know that with the pandemic, what everyone's saying is that domestic violence across the nation is going up. This is because you are stuck at home, where most of the violence is taking place. You can't get out. A lot of people that were going to work were not going to work anymore. A lot of people that had their kids going to school, they were now at home. That was creating a financial burden. Anytime there's that financial burden, we do see that there is an exacerbation of domestic violence throughout. So that has taken place throughout our whole nation. And so this has filtered down to smaller shelters like us. And so we have felt this burden. One of the main things that we have dealt with is our fundraising and our general donations that we get from the community has stopped. And we were not able to do our main fundraiser this past year, which is our Mystery Dinner Theater that we've done for years and years and years. I think most of y'all have either attended or heard of it. That is generally our biggest fundraiser. Unfortunately, we could not do that due to social distancing, the time of the year, and how much COVID numbers were up in the county and everything. And so unfortunately, we did not get to do our major fundraiser. And so we have been in a huge financial burden this whole year. And then we've also been in a really interesting predicament that we haven't faced before, which is we are completely grant funded, and all of our grants have been extremely late paying. And so this is due to most of our grants go through the comptroller before they come to us and they pay out. Well, all the stimulus checks were going out and everything else. And so we went from being about a couple of weeks behind. That was pretty normal for us to kind of, expect it to come in on this date and then it'd be a couple of weeks behind. Here lately, we've been going about 2 to 3 months behind waiting for payment. With the shelter and how our organization works, most of our grants are on a reimbursement basis. And so we have to put the money up front and then we submit to them, hey, we spent X amount on serving this client, by helping them with transportation, helping them get clothes to start their new job, helping them get this medication to get that, STD when they were raped, they could get treated. We help provide those services. And so if we don't have those funds readily available to put up, we don't get that reimbursement. And so we've had a huge struggle of trying to make do. I think one of the biggest things that I've been saying is that we've been robbing Peter to pay Paul at the Ark. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that saying, but if you grew up with a tight budget at home, you're probably familiar with that. That's what we've been trying to do. Our goal is to not to close our services down. We feel that we are a needed service in our community for survivors, and we feel that the violence is going to continue to get worse with the pandemic still in place like it is. And so we want to make sure that we have the shelter there for any survivor that needs it, and want to make sure that we're also able to get out to the community and let them know about our services. And so we are really big about doing community education, getting out and promoting our services, and also doing services with children to try to minimize the effects that they've already experienced if there is violence in the home, but also to teach them that there's a different way. Because what we know is that children that grow up in homes where there is violence are even more likely to grow up and be perpetrators or victims themselves. And so we are really focusing on kids and trying to help prevent them from being the next ones that we see as adults coming into our shelter because they are victims. And so we have primarily what we have asked for is to make up the money that we were not able to make by doing fundraisers and that we missed from our general donations coming in. As y'all know, everyone was really uncertain. A lot of people were not able to work. And so those that generally gave to us, out of their pocket and, would help us, make it through the year, we have not received that. So most of our general donations have gone to next to nothing. And we have a few churches and a few small individuals that have, given here and there, but it's very small and it's not enough to keep us going. And so that is why we have requested the funds. I believe it's right around 30,000 that we are still needing just to even get close to being there. And then we still have, if there's still funds with the next money that comes available, we may have to ask for assistance again. We are still, it's just, I can't even express how difficult it's been for staff and for everyone, just the morale of trying to keep going. When we're struggling to make sure that we have funds to get clients to doctor's appointments and making sure that we have electricity stay on. I do have a few numbers. It does cost us for the shelter as a whole approximately about $68,000 a month just to run the shelter. And so that is quite expensive, but it is definitely a needed service. And I've been praying nonstop, trying to think of the words to say to impress upon y'all about how important our organization is. And today, on the way here, I was thinking about Stephanie Flannery. And I don't know if y'all know her, but she is our first victim that we honor every year at our Candlelight Vigil. She was 13 years old when her stepfather viciously sexually assaulted her, and then he beat her to death with the blunt end of an axe. And that is why we do this work, because we don't want any more Stephanie Flannerys in our county. We are very needed, and you can talk to her family. I've talked with her sister many times about the tragedy and about the ongoing trauma that her family experienced. It's unnecessary. It's preventable. There's no reason for Stephanie to have lost her life to domestic violence. And there's no reason for anyone in our county to lose their life to domestic violence. And I truly believe that. I'm very passionate about this cause. That's why I'm still with this organization after 10 years. And I hope that y'all can, if there's money in the budget, to please see fit to help us and our victims and our survivors in this county, because we truly need it. We have been here since the 80s. We started as an outreach center serving clients, and we have continued to grow our services and expand our programs. And I feel like right now our agency is to a point where we are truly serving the best of our abilities in our community as a whole. And I hope that y'all see that. If there's something that y'all noticed in our organization that y'all think we can do better, that y'all think needs to be fixed, please let us know, because we are always in progress, right? We're always trying to fix and make better what we can. So that's kind of my spiel for y'all. If y'all have the funds to please help the shelter. It is a dire need right now. I can express how dire of a need it is, but it truly is a dire need for our survivors in our community to have the shelter, and we need these funds to continue to help support them and have the shelter there. Is there any questions that I can answer for y'all specifically?
Do you know how much y'all typically make on your fundraiser?
For that individual fundraiser, we generally pull in approximately about 20,000. Right now, I know that we are down right around 23,700 that we still need to make up to even come close to being square. And so I believe the request that we sent in was, from what I understand, was 15 from city and 15 from county. And so we're trying to make up that 30,000 that we generally make. I mean, again, that 20,000 is from the biggest fundraiser, and then we generally do some like smaller fundraisers, like we generally have like a 5K, maybe a golf tournament, something that'll usually bring in a couple of thousand to 5,000. And we haven't really been able to have any of those. We've done a couple of small online fundraisers. That seems to be what other shelters have been trying to do, is online campaigns. We tried that. We didn't have as much success with it as we had hoped. I believe we didn't quite make 2,000 on it. And again, it's a hard time right now. No one really has that individual extra cash hanging on, that they can give out. And so we understand it's just a hard time for individuals. So we're not getting that individual support that we generally have from the community.
So you're asking for 15, 10?
Was it 15 to 10? I believe I didn't get the other, I know it was 15 from city, and I believe that, I thought the other one was 15 as well, but it may have been.
Most.
Yeah,
Yeah,
15,
I'll see that.
yeah, 15 from the letter.
Yes.
That's, yeah. Top line, top two.
So 15 all in from county.
When I'm looking right here,
I believe it was 15 from, is that the city one or the county one?
It's the county.
right here.
Okay, because I thought they also sent a letter to the city for 15 as well, so I wasn't.
We did 3 counties, right? City service 3 counties, does all the other, does other 2 counties fit in?
We have sent requests to the other counties, and over 70% of our services though are in Brown County. And so that's part of the request, is that we are trying to request about 70% from Brown County, and then we sent smaller requests to the other two counties, because we knew they wouldn't have as much. We know they didn't get, as far as the relief funds, they didn't get near, what Brown County did. And so, yes, so I know that on this one, it was 15,000 from the county that we sent. And then I was under the impression that they had sent another one for 15,000 request from the city of Brownwood, as a so, that was kind of.
Well, we will definitely submit the question to the Treasury Department if we can use any of the ARP funds out.
And then, I know that from what we've, been told about the relief fund was that there was supposed to be special provisions for domestic violence and victim services. And so, if there is any special provisions in there,
There are, but probably between now and then, if you could give me a detailed line item of what we have to make sure what we're asking for falls within that
for sure,
special provision.
we can definitely get that.
By my numbers, just to let you know, we'll have, even after funding the Brownwood Water District, we should have around 500,000 or 600,000 left over that I was trying to keep set aside just for situations like that.
Okay.
We like to have the black and white that they're saying, yes, you can use it.
And the thing with the ARP has kind of been our strategy going forward is that we know so many people are in need, is that we're not trying to be greedy. We really tried to put out for our grants and for everything going forward is like the bare minimum that we can get by with. And so for Boca this past year, which has been one of our main grant tours, they cut us about 80,000. And so then this past grant that we just submitted, we went, just put that bare minimum with that 80,000 cut and just did the same amount. And so then we found out about a week ago that Boca didn't have the funds that they thought they were going to be, and then across the board to expect cuts. We were told that most likely, since we were one of the only shelters in Texas that did not request any additional funds, that it could be possible that we would not receive a cut in our Boca funds, but we're still not for sure if all of our grants that we have requested, if we're gonna get the full amount.
So save me the time, the 15,000, what did we fund them last year?
We fund them from the court fees.
No, I mean, how much?
But, well,
How much total?
Last
We
year.
don't have a set amount. It's not a set amount.
Depends
It's
on
based on
collections.
court fees.
Well, where I'm getting at is there's some reason there is a federal law that here's one of the things we're dealing with, that if we can't replace something that we normally fund, but now if you're asking for an increase, I imagine that the answer to that will be yes, we could use the ARP funds to fund the difference of the increase. So I just need to make sure I got the numbers right.
there.
Okay, but yeah, but we can submit an itemized request and
That'd be
everything
great.
for y'all. And who do I need to address that to, and do I have a date that we need to have?
If you
that
just
by?
get to my office, I'll make sure everybody gets a copy.
Okay, is there a date that I need to have it by the?
Or to the auditor's office. yes.
Exactly. Okay, I should have that to you hopefully by the end of the day, if not by tomorrow. So that would work.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all's time. Savannah Cox.
And Josie, that, I didn't elaborate before, but you know why they told us no is because we had already planned to purchase that before the ARP funds were passed. So they said we cannot go back and use it, which didn't make a lot of sense to me because they did say we could go back under the CARES Act and use law enforcement for salary, but they made a special exception for that. But apparently they didn't under the ARP was the last word we got. And since we'd already approved that and all, before the ARP statute was ever even passed, their answer was
ARC and
no.
the American Recovery Act, not this one.
Yeah.
The
Yes,
other
ARP,
the other-
with a P, rescue plan. So if we had waited and began the radios now, then I think they would have went through. Now, if that changes, I'll let you know, but that was as of Friday. So next is, anybody from Home Solution? I didn't see you come in. Come on up. Linda from Home Solutions would like to talk to you.
Good morning, everyone. A lot has happened with our organization since I met with y'all last year. As you know, y'all gave us $10,000 year before last to help prepare the emergency shelter for opening. And we were originally opening we had permission from the city to be open when temperatures were below freezing, and it's for women and families only. And we did, and then we closed until this last cold season started. In November, the city gave us permission to be open whenever we wanted to. which was a huge blessing. So we made the decision to be open every night through the cold season, and be working towards being open year round. So we were open every night in the cold season. We closed at the end of April. Your letter has a typo in it. I said that we used 475 bed nights during this past winter. It was 675 bed nights. In December, we found out that New Beginnings Church, which has historically opened their doors to homeless men, due to COVID, chose not to. So I got permission from my board, and we started taking everyone. The women and families are upstairs, the men are downstairs, and then during the winter storm, we opened our door to the entire community. And we were open 24 hours a day for 10 days. And a lot of people who had lost electricity or broken water lines or whatever also came in. So it has been a huge increase in our services of what we do. In addition, we have partnered with law enforcement organizations in the county to provide homeless hygiene packs to all the law enforcement vehicles that they carry in their patrol cars, and in the wintertime they have blankets. They give people rides to the shelter. We have an amazing relationship with our law enforcement in this community. We did close at the end of April. We did make the decision to open during July and August for the heat of the summer, and we are currently open, and we are almost full every day. We have also started a cooling station in the afternoons from noon to 5, Monday through Friday, so people can come in and get sandwich, cold water, and cool off. So our services have so much expanded. And I was going to, when I was preparing our state ESG, Emergency Services Grant application, I found out that HUD cut the funding, and they were not going to allow they were going to reuse the budget numbers from last year and not allow anybody to make any changes, which was devastating to me because here I'm trying to be open year round and I can't get any more money. I'm looking at other grants, I'm writing grants to find other sources of funds, but this is a vital service to this community. And during the time, a few weeks before we opened, when it started to get hot, I was getting calls every day from organizations, from police officers individually asking, is there somewhere for them to go? And it just broke my heart because I had to say, no, there is nowhere else for them to go. During COVID, we also had to stay open. All of our staff was vaccinated. I had partnered with the health department. We were doing vaccine clinics at our shelter. Anyone who comes in, I ask if you had your vaccine. If you haven't, do you want one? And we have an ongoing list. We've also been designated as the official shelter if there's a homeless person who tests positive for COVID and doesn't need hospitalization, they can come to us. We will put them in a bedroom, isolate them, and take care of them. So it is vital what we're doing. And so I have asked for, last year y'all gave $5,000, and I have asked for 10 this year, and it is all going to go towards operating expenses for our shelter and our street outreach program. And I know that there has been, at least I've seen on the news, funding in the Recovery Act specifically for homelessness. So if there's any way that y'all can help us with that, if you need an itemized listing, I can just give you our budget and you can see what we use funds for. Anything that you can do to help us to be open year round, to be able to serve this most vulnerable population would be really greatly appreciated.
Questions for Libby?
The people that do you have people coming in from other counties pretty regularly?
In the summer, there is a transient homeless population. They usually just stay for one night or two and then they move on. So most of what we deal with is local population. Actually, Brown County. Yes, and there's actually two different classes of homelessness. One is those who actively live on the streets or in their cars. And then there are those who bounce from place to place, a couple nights here, a couple nights there. And it's, to the best of my estimation, there's between 35 and 50 who actively live on the streets. And there are potentially hundreds who bounce from place to place. I know Bob Snyder, who used to be code enforcement with the city, and he was on my board, said that he got calls regularly to go and remove people and families from abandoned houses and buildings. So people think that because we only see a few out on the corners, that homelessness isn't an issue here, but it is.
Would you say down from place to place like Southern, maybe here tonight, Sweetwater tomorrow night?
No, they go from relative to relative to friend within the community. Their kids go to school here. And I deal with a tremendous amount of people who have lost their identification. And when you don't have stable living, that's not that hard to do. And so we have helped over 50 people in the last year get their identification. And if you've ever lost your driver's license or lost your identification, it is a process to get it back. And so that's one of the services that we do, because if you don't have identification, you can't get a job, you can't get a place to live. And so we are not just emergency housing. We use that as the starting point to connect them with services to make permanent changes in their lives. So, and it's working. We are making a huge impact on this community.
So the number of homeless is going down?
I'm sorry?
You're making, so that you're seeing improvements, so you're getting people, were there less homelessness than there was, what I was asking then?
We're able to help more people. There's always homeless, and there's always more that come. But those that we deal with on a regular basis, them we're able to help. And some of them we have brought into our transitional housing program. And we've had 8 graduates from that program, and of the 8 graduates, only 1 has gone back to addiction, and the rest are now productive members of the society. And so we're making permanent changes with them. And so whether it's we just give somebody some help for a day or two, and not everybody wants help. But before I came over here this morning, I was at a motel with a client who stayed with us for several months, got clean, fell off the wagon, and he is drunk and suicidal. And that's what we deal with. And unfortunately, he refused help. And there's nothing else I can do until he's ready. But we develop these relationships with people that, because we love them and we care for them without judgment, they know it's safe to come back to us. I had one couple that I dealt with that were in meth addiction for 1.5 years, and they would come full strung out. We love them, give them some food. They'd come back a few months later, and eventually they got clean. They're working now and living in their own place. So it's developing relationships to help short-term and long.
Do y'all have annual fundraisers?
We did our first one this year, and out at Las Traces, and it didn't do very well. We only brought in $6,000, and after expenses, we made about $3,500. So that was our first one that we had ever done. But we have grown so fast. You know, when I took over 2.5 years ago, we had 1 tiny home, no shelter, no street outreach, and the community assistance we'd done the previous year was $450. Last year, we did $12,000.
So where does your funding come from?
Some of it is from the state. We get, our ESG grant was $83,000. We have about 9 churches that support us regularly, monthly, varying from $50 to $500. We have individuals. We have grants from 3M, from Kohler, that are small grants, and so it comes in from lots of places. I spend a tremendous amount of time looking for money. But the community is really great. Whenever we have a specific need, I'll put it on Facebook, and it's answered within a matter of hours. So, but yes, funding is very hard, especially as fast as we're growing and expanding our services. And I hate to have to turn everyone who's in my shelter at the end of August back out on the streets if we haven't found a place to go, but that's what I'll have to do because we don't have sufficient funding to go everywhere.
Other questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Well, thank you very much, and have a great day.
All right, you too. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all that you do.
All right, thank you.
Next is Good Samaritan. Hi.
I was a high school teacher for 29 years, so I always feel like I need to pass out papers. I don't know what all you have from us, but I went ahead and made packets for everyone.
As long as you don't grade them, we'll be all right.
Okay, I grade on the curve, so we go with effort.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And do you
Gary,
need
well,
one?
I'll take a packet.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, as I've listened to some of my fellow nonprofits this morning as I talked to you, I want to start by saying that Good Samaritan Ministries was really blessed in 2020 and the beginning of 2021. I've heard, and you are all familiar with the CARES Act. Our food pantry site benefited greatly from the CARES Act as money was given to the food bank of Western Texas. It trickled down to us. We could not have been more blessed, I'll just say that. But I'm here today to talk to you about our food services, because as you well know, monies are often, I don't know, in government, if you use the terms designated or undesignated, we use restricted and unrestricted. That's the accounting terms. And so many of the grants, the donations that we receive come to us restricted, meaning they are given for a specific purpose. And so say, for instance, this past year, the death of, there's been several, I hate to say that, but the dentist that works so much, Dr. Rivas, when people wanted to make memorials in his honor because he was one of our volunteers, they often restricted it or designated it to the food pantry. And it's very hard to find people who want to give money to help with rent and utilities. We are a TXU Energy partner. We work with TXU. They give us a quarterly grant to help with only TXU clients to help with their utilities. And we've also been blessed this past year to work with the City of Brownwood Water Department to work with them to help people with their water bills. So if you want to look at our balance sheet, which is near the back, and I've included a lot of things for you. I'll come back and touch on those. I've given you a list of our board members. I've also given you a running balance sheet to show what we spent. But if you want to look at our balance sheet, you'll see direct aid, line item 11-100. Our direct aid, you can see the City of Water Assistance, which that was pretty flush because we got the check from them in October as your fiscal year begins. And then the same with TXU. But I want to call your attention to line 10-700, which is direct aid. And that's what I'm here today to talk to you about. And this is where the county has been so gracious to help us in the past several years. This is helping us keep people in their homes, keep their utilities on for those who do not qualify for either TXU funding, City of Brownwood funding, or any additional funding. So if you'd like to look at our financial aid specialist, Jamie Espinoza, does a great job of making this a color-coded document for you. You'll see client names, and we redacted their last names so that we can protect their confidentiality. You can see the vendors. You can see who those funds went to. I was listening to Linda as she talked about helping with IDs and birth certificates. We too have seen an uptick in that. You've got to have an ID. You've got to have a birth certificate to get housing, to get jobs. And so you'll see several times throughout this list, you'll see the Brown County Clerk, and you'll see where we helped with those. You'll see City of Baines, where we helped people with water. And so the funds that we are requesting do not go through our budget other than as a flow through from you into these vendors. And I think we would agree it's to everyone's advantage to keep people in their homes. I don't know of any landlord that just can't wait to start eviction proceedings against someone. And so, you know, COVID has continued into this year, but I would like to tell you that what we have seen since the beginning of 2021 was the impact that was felt by, some call it snowmageddon, some call it snow, the cold weather that we had in February. Let me use some names. It's not really the names, but let me call them Jimmy and Susie. Jimmy works for a local cleaning company. In fact, he's doing so well that
The owner of the company has talked about making him a supervisor. His little wife Susie is an hourly wage worker. They have 2 children. They live from paycheck to paycheck, which is often what we see with the clients we help. When the cold weather came and they couldn't work, there weren't buildings clean, there weren't restaurants open, they lost wages. And for most of us, I mean, if you're like me, I'm blessed. I have a little in savings that I can draw from, but a lot of our clients don't have those reserves. And this particular little family also had an all-electric apartment, and they weren't with a good company. And you know, you probably heard stories of $600 and $700 electric bills when they finally got the heat to come back on. That's the kind of people we help. They've never come to us for assistance before, ever. They just hit a rough patch and they need a little bit of help. Another client that we helped this year, let me tell you a little bit about another client that we helped. I'm going to use the name Hazel. That wasn't her name. She was 86 years old. When she called us, she was at first very proud. She said, I own my home. I've never had to ask for help, but right now I'm $150 short on my rent. So as Jamie Espinosa began to talk with her, she came down, she broke down into tears. She said, I got a phone call and they told me I had won a sweepstakes, but I had to give them my bank account number because they didn't want to put a big check in the mail. And I know you're recognizing this because there were several that were turned into the sheriff's department. This little lady was taken for over $6,000. She owned her home. She had a social security check of right at $1,000. They cleaned her out. She's another type of person that we assist. And I would tell you, I could talk all day about the plight of the senior citizens in Brown County. Many of them are living on so little money and with low money. But I also need to tell you, so you understand who we're helping. I'll tell you who we don't help. Back in May, we had a lady call. She was about $200 short of rent. So when she came in to visit, one of the questions we asked them was, are you a SNAP recipient? Are you a Medicaid recipient? Well, yes, she and her family were getting Medicaid. And so Jamie pressed her and said, tell us about your SNAP benefits. Well, she kind of hesitated. And finally she said, okay, I need to be honest with you. And Jamie's like, you better be honest because if we find out you lied to us, we're not going to help you. She said, well, do you want to know what I normally get for SNAP or do you want to know what I just got for SNAP? She was one of the ones who the last week in May, I don't know if y'all are aware of this, but families, this is a program that came through Governor Abbott. Texas was giving money to help families who lost free and reduced lunches during the school year. And because Governor Abbott, you know, it was so weird which schools were in session, which ones weren't. They just came up with a system that every family, every child that already was on free or reduced lunches, and the family was already receiving SNAP or Lone Star benefits for those families. That child got $1,000 for the summer to help them buy food. This woman had 5 children. We didn't help her with food. So I'm telling you these stories about Jimmy and Susie and Hazel and then the family that got all the SNAP money to tell you that any dollars that you entrust us to help people with rent and utilities, we will vet these people carefully. We're not just going to be a bleeding heart that helps anybody that comes in. We want to be sure that your dollars, and as I've heard this morning, everybody wants your money. Everybody wants your money. We want to be sure that whatever dollars you do give to us will go to the people who need them the most. Our policy is we help only once in a 24-month period unless a client can demonstrate a true need. And last year they were COVID-related needs, but we had to be able to prove, that client had to be able to prove to us they didn't work because of COVID or, you know, something like that. We have asked again this year, as we have in the past, we're asking again for $12,000. And I have a question for you, Ms. Robinson. I think there still could be some matching money from the city that I haven't asked for, is that correct? Seems like about the time I get here, there's still some, so,
Yes.
with the difference, you gave us 4,800, and then about this time of year, I'll ask for another 4,800. And so when you look at the difference with that 12,000, that's only $2,400 more dollars than what we are already receiving. And we only help a maximum of $400 on rent, so if you want to look at it like that, that would only be 6 more families that we would assist with rent. You know, if you want to break it down by birth certificates, IDs, whatever. And so, thank you for what you have provided in the past, and I would be happy to answer any questions. I know like our budget, I don't think it's any more complicated than y'all's, I'll be honest, but I would be happy to answer any questions about how we've spent the money and how we can help you keep these folks, many who are the working poor, keep them in their house and keep their utilities on.
Questions?
Well, I have to give you an A to.
Well, you gave us, I think you answered our questions in advance.
Okay, well, thank y'all so much.
As a good teacher usually does.
Well, they say you can take the teacher out of the classroom, but you can't take the classroom out of the teacher. Again, thank y'all so much for letting us come, and all of our nonprofit groups. So many of us work together. We work with the ARC in providing clothing. We work with Brown County Home Solutions, a lot on the same people, and so I appreciate it very much. May I ask for another quick question, please?
John, you want to come on up? This is John with the Humane Society, and he'd like to tell us what they've had a tough time as well. So.
It's been a rough year for animals. We lost about $95,000 this past year. The expenses has went up. We lost volunteers, so we had to hire more laborers. So it's just, with COVID, it's just hit us all. And we're seeing it once again because everybody that got animals through COVID when they were staying at home is now the explosion of animals coming back to us. It hit us even harder. And we're asking for any increase in the subsidy. We're thankful for what you already give, and we're asking for any increase that y'all can do.
Just to let you know, we're not unsympathetic. We've known for quite some time that a huge volume of your animals come from outside the incorporated cities. And compared to what we've been contributing, it's just where do we find the money to make it go up is the key. We know that you're hurting. So, and John and I've met twice over the last month, I guess, about the increase in, when COVID hit, lots of people just abandoned their animals. They were worried about putting food on the table for their human family, not so much their animal family. And of course, all those animals, most of them end up in your shelter. So he's kind of bursting at the seams with that as well. So.
Yeah, we wasn't able to do our fundraiser. That was about a $30,000 loss. And we did manage to open the thrift store, which has helped tremendously, but it's still not enough.
So how much are we giving you? Forgive me, all these numbers.
85.
That's what I thought. I was gonna say 9, but it's 8,500.
This is a no-kill shelter, right?
It's never been stipulated as a no-kill shelter. The last year, every shelter in America is trying to go to a no-kill status. They're trying to do a managed intake, which I've got some literature on that I will hand out. I know there's a lot in the community that disagree with managed intake, but it's hard to please the public. I mean, a lot of our grants, a lot of our grants and stuff now are being based on being a no-kill shelter. So we're trying to
It tends to be, and I think in another 10 years to get a federal grant, from the state, you're gonna have to be a designated no-kill shelter. They're not gonna give you any money.
But as far as lost and found animals, we try to take every animal that's lost and found. If you find it on the road and bring it out there, we try to take it. Sometimes we ask you if you could keep it a few days, and we get a lot of grief over that. Owner surrenders is given an appointment to turn it in, and
That's a little different.
depending on our kennels, is what we have available. We offer to give them food to feed the animal if it's because of lack of funds. We do everything we can to try to alleviate us having to euthanize a bunch of animals, because when I got on the board in March of last year, I had calls from all over the United States because they was putting it out there. We was fixing to mass euthanize all these animals in the shelter. And believe me, they don't mind calling you at 3 o'clock in the morning and cussing you.
Well, we don't. One of the things that he and I discussed is we're looking at trying to add on to increase the size of the facility. And we have a verbal response from the feds as far as the ARP fund saying, yes, we believe you can use that to build in a new building under building acquisition, which they gave the city and I an answer pretty much the same day. But I want it in writing. I want it black and white before we do anything. So, but what he's talking about here is not including it, but I want to let you know that they do have a new building project that they're working on.
And we have a $50,000 donor that has restricted it to the building of a new building. And I've got a letter here that states all that. And we're asking the city and the county to look into the ARP funds and
To match that.
to match
So
that.
would it take all of 150 to build a new building?
I think between building the building and we've got old kennels that need repairs and stuff, and then tearing the old building down would be an expense too. So, and we had the city of Brownwood engineers out in May of last year looking at that. They deem that we need to get out of it and get into something else.
And I haven't visited with Emily just yet. But, once he'll submit, we talked about that. He's going to submit that proposal as well. And of course, that's entirely contingent upon the ARP funds. If we can't use ARP funds, that's how I wouldn't even bring it to you for consideration. But, and that's something that will be funded at a later point in our ARP program too. If the commissioners chose to fund it, for what I'm getting at, it wouldn't be immediate.
Does any of the commissioners have any questions?
So your operating budget this past year or this next year will be total all in what?
About $328,000.
That's staff and food,
Staff, food.
veterinary.
Well, actually, the food, we're lucky because Canada gives us all of our dog food at no cost.
The veterinarian costs.
Veterinarian
I know they
costs
discount it.
is probably besides labor, the number one expense.
Even with their discounts.
Yes, even with the discounts, we spend in the neighborhood of 60 to 80 to 100,000 on veterinarians. And that's spay and neutering, because we want to make sure every animal that goes out of that shelter is spayed and neutered. There are a lot of shelters that don't do that.
So you're saying $586 an animal is what it costs you?
So that's for a 34-day average. The director's on leave, and she didn't give me a copy of what y'all have, so. It's much cheaper to euthanize, but,
Well, it just says a basic cost of $586. I would think that would be per year.
that's a 34, the average day is 34 days. Your main initial cost is the first 3 days that animal's coming.
That's veterinary. I'm forgetting about all that.
Shots, you have to give it everything when it first comes.
They can't even put it in the general population until it's been vaccinated, and I forgot all about that. And that's a vet coming out and doing all of that.
Well, we have vet techs and stuff that we try to employ. Our labor out there is probably the smallest in Brown County. We have people out there working, doing the job they're doing for $9 an hour, and it's hard to keep staff. I mean, we have a regular turnover, so.
What's your Off the top of your head, do you know how many animals you have on average per day?
Right now, we're full,
What is full?
69 is capacity set by, when I got on the board, there was 174 dogs and about 70 cats out there, which was way over capacity. We don't have the holding facilities for that, so.
We're talking about cats and dogs, nothing else really, right?
No.
Just cats and dogs.
Cats and dogs.
I don't know what other pets you might end up with.
Well, I had a call, let's take a cockatoo, so.
And I read in the news just yesterday that number is probably, the pet explosion is gonna continue to go up because nobody could afford to spay and neuter their animals this past fall, this spring, so.
We do work closely with APA and several other rescues, but some of their stipulations is stay as far away from euthanasia as you can, or they don't want any part of it. They don't want any part of it. They'll break their ties with us.
Questions for John? We know you're hurting, everybody's hurting, but we're gonna do what we can.
And I'm gonna leave these. This is that other proposal. Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I'll make sure everybody.
And there's some, a pamphlet in there on managed intake and stuff. So it explains all that. But we would appreciate anything y'all could do.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you. I don't see how this is. It's not stable. All right, last we have the public library. Last but not least.
Hello,
Hi.
thanks so much. So I'm Becky Isbell with the Brownwood Public Library. And first of all, I just want to thank you for your support over many years that you've all been supporting us. It really does make a big impact, and we really appreciate that. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about our pandemic response like everyone else. So we were closed for about a month, maybe a month and a half, and then we slowly reopened. At first we were doing curbside. It definitely changed how people use the library. We had a lot more people checking out our ebooks and our digital audiobooks, and a lot more resources into our ebooks because that greatly increased during that time. And it's, of course, gradually been coming back, but definitely I think in a lot of ways it has changed how people use the library. There's more ebooks, more, we're lending out Kindles that people can read our ebooks on. We've got these kids' tablets that it doesn't have internet, it just is for like toddlers and stuff. Families can take home and helps with the digital divide. We did get a CARES grant through the state library, through the National Library Association, of course, through the federal government. And one of the emphases on that was the digital divide. And of course, the pandemic really highlighted that the people that had internet access and could access that, and the kids who could really have the resources to learn how to use internet and all of that, and those who didn't have that at home. So another thing we got with those funds were hotspots. We've got 34 hotspots that people can, with their library card, take home like a book. And it's just one element of that. I know having it for a week may not, you can only do homework for a week, but so many of these kids these days, their homework is exclusively online. And if you don't have access to the internet at home, then you're already behind the curve there. And the same, a lot of people I know have had to work from home. So that has been a resource that has been really popular with our community. We generally have reserves on them. And it's just something that I think our community really needs. Hopefully we'll get to the point where everybody does have internet at home. But in the meantime, those hotspots are helping to bridge that digital divide. So right now we are reopened. We're still getting back to normal. I think people are really eager to have some semblance of normal. In 2020, our summer reading club, that's always a big part of our summer, we actually, y'all had gotten the unclaimed capital credits for us. And we were deciding how to use them when the pandemic hit and we came upon summer reading club. And it was really amazing how we were able to use that. We got an app called Goose Chase, which is a scavenger hunt app. And every day during the summer, we had different challenges for the kids. Most of them are things where they can do at home. We had bags they could pick up with craft supplies and different things every week. And so every day the kids had a challenge to read. They had a photography challenge that they could take a picture of something around their house. And then we had a weekly math challenge, science challenge, engineering challenge. They were all fun things. We don't want to give the kids homework over the summer. But things like that, the summer slide is something that everybody talks about, where over the summer, the school kids often will go back about 4 months because they're not keeping their minds active. They're not reading, they're not doing math, different things like that. So I think having that was a great asset. We heard from so many families that it was so great to have something for their kids to do and keep their minds active over the summer. So this year we've been able to go back somewhat to normal for our reading club. I don't know if you've seen any of the kids with beaded necklaces, but the more they read, they get to come to the library and spin our little spinner and get beads to add to their necklace. So the kids have been really excited about reading this summer. We've heard from so many people how great it was and how eager the kids were to read to add beads to their necklace. So definitely seeing people wanting to get back to normal. So our focus for the coming year is to continue to provide great services, help with that digital divide. We did get those hotspots with a grant, but to continue them, we of course need to pay monthly service for 34 hotspots. People still need to use the computers to get jobs, to apply for services and benefits, and the library is one of the few places people can come and use a computer. So that's something that we continue to provide. Of course, we're still doing the basics, books, movies, audiobooks, both digital and books on CD. Of course, everything digital is more expensive. Costs are always going up for everybody, so that's a lot. Also, our building is aging. It was built, I believe, finished in '65, and our roof is in serious need of replacement. Just there's some minor things that we need to support our building. We've requested from the city of Brownwood funds to replace the roof, but I don't think they have the funds either. But that is definitely something that we are trying to focus on, is just maintaining our building as it gets older.
Is that the original roof?
I'm
Is
not
it
sure.
replaced?
I don't know for sure.
Sadly, we don't, I remember the first year we got quite a bit on our capital credits and then it dropped. We just don't know from year to year what it's going to be.
Yeah, and I think it, like Lisa was saying, it's tied to certain resources, which is wonderful, but I think so often, I think all the nonprofits just need operating expenses as well, which can be hard to find sometimes. So I know I was sitting back there listening to everybody, and I know there's so many needs in this community, and I know the struggle y'all must have trying to divide that up, and I know you want to give to everybody abundantly, and I definitely know that struggle. But I did want to say, I think over the years, every year or almost every year, I think last year we didn't ask for an increase, but we asked for an increase, and I think before I started, our director never asked for an increase. And over the years, just the cost of, our library catalog going online, the cost of living, all that went up, and we basically stayed the same. So I think for about 15, 20 years, our budget was basically the same. When I started 6 years ago, we had part-timers who had been there for 15 years that were still making basically minimum wage. And that's something we've been working on. I think we actually have to go to a point where we have fewer people and they make more of a livable salary. But it's something we've been struggling with for years. We are a nonprofit library. About 10% of the libraries in Texas are nonprofits. The majority are either city or county departments. So it definitely has its challenges and benefits, but trying to balance all of that, and I think every library is unique, but compared to other libraries of our size, we are definitely on the lower end of our income, and just trying to balance all of that. But I do want you to know I really appreciate you, and I know it's difficult trying to balance all that.
Do you size the library by the amount of people it serves, the actual size of the building, or the number of books you have? I mean, have you say?
For libraries, it's based on your service population. So because we get funding from the county, it's our county population.
That's that 14,000 or something.
They're talking about the 38 all in,
Yeah, 38,000 red.
607 or
Yeah.
whatever it was. Gotcha.
Does anyone have any questions?
Questions?
Got lots of questions.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's your last name there? Isbel, ISB. Thank you, thank you.
These handouts from John, they're not stapled, so we'll have to go through and make sure everything's the same. They're not separate. So,
Is anyone else that's not on the workshop here that wants to? All right, so with that being said, I guess we'll do this all over again, or not over again, but again, on Monday.
Talking about all this Recovery Act money but in reality, every one of these people almost won't need some of it and ask for some of it. You know, $7 million is not any money. $7 million is change. We better watch how we go about doling it out.
That's why,
We need a list up here. Some of them ain't gonna get all they want.
even with the water district, we're gonna,
People starving to death need it.
when we get audited, it's us that's audited, not them, even though we gave them the money. So that's why we're trying to cross our T's and dot every I with it.
But we can't promise everybody they're gonna get everything they want. You know,
We know there are jobs, even though they're probably minimum wage, there's lots of job opportunities right now, but just go anywhere that you got a sign on the door.
some of these people
Well, I
don't
think
get
that-
any money hardly coming in. We pay water bills. You know, we need this a way deal. We gotta weigh all this. We better watch what we're doing.
Yeah, you gotta spend more more money on for a human than you are an animal, that sort of thing, because you know, that's, you got priorities there. There are people that would go the other way, but
All right, with, by the way, if we just split, and we don't include Bangs and Early in the, what the Brownwood Water Improvement District asked for, ours is 1.35. If we just split it evenly with the city, that'd be worst case scenario, because I think the city serves a little bit larger, but let's, just in the back of your head, keep that number. And with that, that still leaves us about 600,000 out of that first disbursement left over if we get permission to use it for any of these other deals.
are you gonna look into these requests we heard
I
today,
am.
and see which ones are?
Most of them are not covered in their general bills, so we'll have to submit a question for mostly each one of them.
Some of these talk about like a hardship for this 1 year, so. Which,
And-
if we did that, I would say that you would do perhaps their normal budget, this would be separate items, saying this is.
Right.
Not-
I think
Not,
we,
not tiring ourselves doing it every year from now.
right, I think the increase, they're very, very specific. Anything that we normally fund, so anything we funded last year, we cannot use ARC to fund this next year. But now additional increases, that's an entirely different matter. But I like to, and again, I know everybody wants to go, I like to have it in black and white from them so that they can, it's not a he said, she said deal. I tell them, send that to us in writing that we can use it for that. So as soon as I get those, Bob puts them in a file and we have them.
But we hadn't heard near all of them. We got
We got
a
more.
health department. Before we start giving the water bill $3 million or $1.5 million or whatever, we've got to talk to everybody.
Right. But
Like Andy.
I agree, but now a lot of these that are asking for their special, they're not gonna allow us to use that money for it. What, the big answer that I'm getting is, well, we gave you $700,000 in CARES funds last year. What'd you do with the balance of that? That's, I'm getting that a lot. That's what that money was supposed to be used for. This is COVID mitigation and very specific, it's a very convoluted bill.
So we should have watched last year's money a little more closely.
Well, I don't know how much of that we have left over.
They didn't give you time last year to watch it.
Yeah, and they're not giving us a whole lot of time this year, but that,
that's just goes, who's in charge of, that pushed this bill through in Washington, if that makes sense. It was pushed through before a lot of thought went into it, in my opinion. But we're trying to, we want to use for our citizens what we can if they're going to give it rather than give it to somebody else, just like we said. You're exactly right.
If any of y'all dealt with the Payroll Protection Act, which I dealt with, that thing came out and it was right there and you had to submit it, and then the rules kept changing after you already started. You're like, it's kind of scary to deal with, but
Yeah, like they've gone back and said if our crime rate is increased, we can use the ARP funds to hire new deputy sheriffs. Well, we're not experiencing that, thank goodness. But what does that have to do with COVID mitigation? But they tacked that onto that bill anyway. So anyway, all right. With that being said, I'll adjourn.